All right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to another exciting episode of Daily December 2023. This is day 8. Now, I have to put out a, not a correction. I can't think of the word I want to use right now, but I am not recording this video on December 8th. I'm recording it on the 7th. I am pre-recording a daily December video. The reason being, I need to take a drink again. The reason being, I literally just finished recording my Fabula Ultima video that I did talk about the stuff I learned. The reason being, Matt Colville, anyone that's watching this channel for a while will know that I'm very familiar with Matt Colville. I have had arguments with him that he doesn't know exist because he doesn't know I exist, as he should or shouldn't. However that phrase should be applied, because he is such a bigger name than I will ever be. But Matt Colville, back when the whole OGL debacle went on and everyone was saying, well, we're going to make our own D&D and it's going to have craps tables and hookers, and yeah, and then we got, who was it? I can't remember the company. I think it's Kobold Press. They're like, yeah, we're already making our own RPG, and it's gonna be better than D&D. And all they did was change some of the words. That's their new RPG. It's not Dungeons and Dragons. It's fun things and fragans, because that's what we call winged lizards that breathe fire. They're not dragons. They're fragans. Yeah, and it was pathetic. It really, really was. Well, around the same time that Kobold Press said that we're going to make our own thing, and then completely failed in doing that, Matt Colville said he not only was he going to be doing the same thing, that he had already been working on his own RPG. Now, for those of you who don't know who Matt Colville is is a writer. I'm going to feel really, really bad about this. For Matt Colville fans, in the comments down below, fill in the details that I don't know. I'm actually not familiar with any novels that he has written. If he has written them, I haven't read them, which is not really that big a thing because of my double vision. I can't really read novels anymore. But he has done writing for video games. He wrote the story for Evolve, which was I can't remember what it's called. One side played people hunting a giant monster, and the other side played the giant monster. Kind of like Dead by Daylight, but much more action-oriented. And the game itself flopped. Not because the game itself wasn't cool, but because they monetized it super, super horribly, and their marketing plan for it was just stupid. But anyway, so he's written for quite a few different things, and he's a very talented writer. And he also has a remarkably large presence in the RPG community in general, the TTRPG community. He writes a lot of supplements for D&D 5th edition. That was one of the reasons why he was, I don't really want to say involved in the OGL debacle, because he wasn't. Because that was something that happened with Wizards of the Coast and a single journalist that liked to improve the truth to make things seem like they were significantly worse than they actually were. But it was something that was going to affect him. And he's put out a lot of really great supplements for 5th edition. Because of that, he knows 5th edition really well. And he knows D&D in general really well. One of my favorite things he's ever done, my buddy Dale Kingsmill, she was the White Ranger in last year's Power Rangers campaign, and is an amazing person that I've been lucky enough to know for quite a few years. And she's very heavily involved in the RPG scene, and she's released some supplements. I actually reviewed one of the supplements that her and her friend put out when the Theros book came out, and she just created a bunch of new classes in that. That's all still, it's a D&D deep dive. It still exists on the channel. But anyway, Matt found out about Dale because she's amazing, and they became friends. And Matt actually invited Dale to a 4th edition D&D campaign that Matt ran, and Dale got to play 4E D&D, which, again, is my personal favorite version of Dungeons & Dragons. And yeah, he it's one of my favorite things that he's ever done, because he doesn't hate 4th edition D&D like so many other kind of hipster D&D people. Is like, oh yeah, 4th edition, you mean the video game? Which it never was, but whatever. They tried to make it into a video game, and it sucked at a video game because it's not a video game. 3rd edition is a fucking video game. So don't give me that shit. Anyway, Matt's been very involved in D&D for a long time. And he's one of the most respected voices in there. When you mention Matt Colville, he and Mercer are colleagues. There's a few people that when you talk about kind of the D&D community, that when their names come up, people go, oh yeah, them. So Matt Colville is one of those people. And again, the reason I've had one-sided arguments with him is because I do not believe he is right on everything. But he's right a lot. So anyway, Matt had claimed that he had already started writing his own RPG because that's what he wanted to do, which makes perfect sense. Again, when you become as knowledgeable as he is, you eventually do start thinking, well, this doesn't do what I want it to. What if I made something that did? And it's incredibly difficult, which is why I have had that thought, and I've never done it, because it's super hard. So anyway, fast forward almost a year, because again, this all happened last January. Matt Colville, today, which by the time you're watching this will be yesterday, launched his crowdfunding for his new RPG that, as of right now, is being called the MCDM RPG. MCDM is his kind of brand name. All of his channels are labeled MCDM. I'm interested. I'm interested in seeing if he sticks with the name MCDM when he actually publishes it, or if he actually does give it a more proper name. I think both are fine choices. I'm just interested to see which one he decides to go with. But for right now, they're calling it the MCDM RPG. And so he has launched on Backerkit, not on Kickstarter or anything like that. He's done it through Backerkit, which I'm starting to see. I need to talk to someone about this, simply because I'm not seeing many RPGs launching on Kickstarter. I'm seeing a lot more going through Backerkit. So I'm wondering if just RPGs in general, Backerkit is better to you guys or something, or it offers more favorable splits or something. Just because, again, I don't have any problem with Backerkit. I've backed a few things on Backerkit. It's a great website. I just find it interesting that I'm seeing so many RPG creators going Backerkit over any of the other multitude of crowdfunding platforms. So if anyone actually knows why RPGs are going almost exclusively Backerkit, let me know. But that being said, he launched his Backerkit today, and while I am recording this, I believe it has only been launched for, let's see, as far as I can see, someone named James Intricaso, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I'm bad with my own name, much less other people's, who looks to be the lead designer for MCDM, announced 11 hours ago that it was live. So I'm assuming it's been live for like half a day, roughly. And they have over 10,000 backers and are getting close to $2 million raised, of a goal of 800,000. So for some bizarre reason, I think it's going to be successful. Now, again, if you guys watched my coverage of the OGL debacle, you will know that I had a huge, huge problem with all the people that immediately started bad-mouthing Dungeons and Dragons and everything like that because of a bunch of lies and misinformation. And again, if you watched the intro to this, you know that there's still a few of those people that and companies that I still do not hold in very high regard, and I will continue to insult them for being morons as often as I can. Matt Colville, I don't believe, is one of those people, because I believe he's slightly smarter than that. But I'm still not a fan of this idea of, well, we have to move away from anything involving Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is in Creative Commons now, guys. You can stop flipping out about that. Anything you want to do with Dungeons and Dragons, you can do 100% for free. You don't have to tell anybody. It's Creative Commons. We can stop bitching about this. So when I hear people kind of running on the idea of, well, look, I'm creating something so you don't have to use Dungeons and Dragons because it's so evil, I'm always going to not just be skeptical of it, I am going to outright dislike it from the get-go. And that's not what Matt's doing. Again, I 100% believe that he had been planning to do this long before the OGL happened, and the OGL debacle just was an opportune time for him to go, for all you people that really hate this and are getting all up in arms about this and are wanting me to make some sort of statement condemning them, I am making my own game. So if you guys want something else, it'll be there eventually. And I've actually read through it, and that's what this video is going to be, is I'm going to look over the actual stuff that he's put on the site. There's going to be a link in the description. First of all, I do want to kind of clarify, I do not know Matt Colville. I have never spoken with him directly. He doesn't know who the hell I am. Probably never will. None of this is sponsored, supported, or in any way connected to Matt Colville, MCDM, or anything like that. I think he is a wonderful person that is every so often wrong. But this is not, I do not get any benefit for doing this. However, I am a fan of tabletop RPGs. My audience is a fan of tabletop RPGs, and this community is a fan of tabletop RPGs. And everything I've read about this makes me excited. So that's what I'm going to do, is I am going to cover and basically do kind of a D&D deep dive, not D&D, on the stuff that he's put out. Because all of this stuff exists on the internet. You can get it for free. Anything that is behind a paywall, I will generally never show pictures of unless I have no choice in order to kind of critique it. This is all stuff that you can go to the link in the description. You can see all of this. So I do not feel bad about showing this and getting into the nitty-gritty of it, because I really want you guys to understand why it is that I'm excited about this. So this is probably going to be a long video. It's the reason I'm pre-recording this is because if I don't record it today, I'm going to forget about it because my brain doesn't work. And I don't actually have short-term memory. So, that being said, if we go here, this is the MCDM RPG. This is prepare to draw steel at the top. Yeah, as you can see right here, the number keeps going up. When I first opened this page like an hour or two ago, the number, well, I think it was under 1.8. And I don't think it had cracked 10,000. I might be wrong about that. But it cracked it soon after. So as you can see, this is getting funded. As you can see, I'm not going to play the video here because that is his thing. Go to the page and watch his video on it. But I'm going to talk about all the stuff that we're talking about here. So this is all the stuff that he's done. And again, I recognize Strongholds and Followers, Kingdom and Warfare. These are two 5th edition supplements that, from what I've heard, are brilliant. I don't own either of them because they cost money. And I just haven't used them. For D&D, I spend so much money on Wizards of the Coast stuff that I don't have time to buy third-party, or I don't have the money to buy third-party products. Again, not that I don't like them. I just don't have the money. So that being said, so you can see this is the stuff that he's done before. I think Yeah, this is just artwork for his new stuff. So the game specifically, and this is where I start. This is where I first started going, oh, and started having bad flashbacks to Pathfinder. So this first thing, what this game is exactly what I would expect him to say, and it makes sense. He's basically saying that, hey, by level 1, you're already cool, and as you level up, you're just going to get cooler. It's a very 4th edition feel. And you will see me reference 4th edition a lot in here because I'm going to tell you guys this right now. Matt Colville not only doesn't hate 4th edition, I think Matt Colville likes a lot of 4th edition because there's a lot of ideas that I won't say that he stole or anything like that because they don't exist purely in 4th edition. Like they're not 100%. They only exist in 4th edition. There's a lot of stuff in here that if you were to open up 4th edition, you would go, wait a minute, that looks like this. And that's not a bad thing. Again, 4th edition is awesome. It is my favorite version of Dungeons and Dragons. And there are so many great aspects of 4th edition that just because a few very, very loud morons made a lot of noise on the internet back when 4th edition launched, got people to think that it was somehow bad or evil or a lesser form of D&D. And it actually forced Wizards of the Coast, when they made 5th edition, to abandon a lot of the best aspects of 4th edition to 5th edition's detriment. So that being said, you can see, what is this game? You know, basically, hey, you're a cool person. And it's going to be very, very, from everything I've read here, it's going to be very, very kind of action focused. Not combat focused, though I do think that's going to be a massive, massive part of this game. And I'll explain why in a little bit later. But when you go down to the what this game is not, I'm going to just read this entire thing for you and then talk about exactly why this made me pause. What this game is not. You can absolutely run epic games with heroes exploring dungeons, but this game is not about dungeon crawling. You don't track torches or rations or worry about running out of light. You can plunge, heedless of danger, into a dark and haunted forest, but this game is not about exploration. No hexes to explore. By focusing on the core fantasy of epic heroes fighting monsters and tyranny, we think we can deliver a better experience for you, for your friends and your table. So, what this says to me, this tiny little paragraph, which I'm going to admit right now, is an incorrect assumption. But just reading that paragraph, what I see is this is a combat simulator. Which the reason I said, well, that gave me, bad Pathfinder experiences. Pathfinder is a combat simulator. The creators have said point blank, no, we created this around combat. Yes, you can do other things in Pathfinder. The original Critical Role campaign that we saw, broadcast campaign 1 with Vex and Vax and Percy and all that stuff, that was a Pathfinder game for 10 levels. And I think they were playing for like 2 or 3 years before they actually started broadcasting it. So it was a Pathfinder game. They very much could. You can run story-based campaigns in Pathfinder in the same way that you can run a story-based campaign in Lasers and Feelings. And to be perfectly honest, Lasers and Feelings is slightly better at dealing with role-playing than Pathfinder is, in my humble opinion. Pathfinder is a combat simulator. Most of everything in the book is built around how is this going to work in combat. The vast majorities of your abilities that you get, whether through feats, it's all combat. 3rd edition was the exact same way. You really didn't get non-combat feats. And if they were relatively broad. They were basically non-combat feats were skill specializations and things like that. And that was really all you had for non-combat things. 3rd edition was a combat simulator as well. though not quite to the extreme that Pathfinder turned it into. And then Pathfinder 2nd Edition is just combat. It's overly complicated nonsense of combat, but that's what it is. And so when I read this, where it's like, this is not about dungeon crawling. It's not about exploration. This is about the core fantasy of epic heroes fighting monsters and tyranny. It sounds like a combat simulator to me. Which, again, it's not a bad thing. D&D 4th Edition had a very heavy combat focus. But there were still a lot of abilities that you could get that had nothing to do with combat. That had no use in combat. And generally, I think it was like every 3 levels... or every other level, I can't remember which, you would have to choose an ability that really had no combat benefit. And they were meant for role-playing and exploring and other things like that. That's what 4th Edition was about. So when I first read this part here, this whole little section there, I was like, oh, he's making a combat simulator, which is perfectly fine. A lot of people really, really enjoy combat. Again, if you play Pathfinder, it's probably your favorite part of the game. You guys may notice I shit on Pathfinder a lot. I've had bad experiences with Pathfinder people. And to be perfectly honest, you guys bring it on yourselves, because the most vocal Pathfinder people go everywhere on the internet and just tell people, well, your RPG sucks, you really should be playing Pathfinder. And if you want to get people to play your game, that is the exact opposite way to do it. If you go and just shit on something that I really enjoy and then expect me to really enjoy the thing that you like, I'm not going to. I'm probably going to hate what you like just out of spite, which I can neither confirm nor deny is why I have such a strong dislike for Pathfinder. But, yeah, so anyway, going in, if it's a combat simulator, that's perfectly fine. But then they start going into more things. Things like game uses 2d6 for other rolls. So it's a d6 based game as opposed to a d20. That in and of itself I thought was a little bit weird. If you watched my Fabula Ultima video, you know that using 2 dice instead of 1 massively changes, especially when you add them up, massively changes the spread of rolls that are possible, and basically takes it from having an equal chance to roll any number to heavily weighting the middle rolls and heavily limiting the possibility of you rolling on either extreme. So the fact that they're doing this as a 2d6 based game does mean that the game is going to run very differently. And then this thing of you cannot miss. They've basically gotten rid of attack rolls or accuracy checks or whatever you want to call them. Basically, anytime you use an ability, it's going to hit. And the only difference is going to be how much damage it does, because the damage it does is going to be based on your dice roll. That in and of itself is a really interesting design choice. From a game designer standpoint, one of the things that you have to learn in when you're designing anything custom for D&D 5th edition, is the idea of how easy is this for it to not work. Because that is going to affect how powerful you make it. If it's really common for this ability to miss for whatever reason, like if you're going to make abilities that rely on attack rolls against a creature's AC, in the early game, those rolls are going to miss almost as often as they hit, depending on the character. But in general, you're going to probably have like a 60% success rate. In the end game, you're going to be much closer to an 80 or 90% success rate because of bounded accuracy. Armor class only goes up for most creatures. They max out their armor class at about 20 or 21, and the really, really tough creatures, I think the highest armor class in the game, or at least in the core book, is, I want to say it's a Tarask, and it has a 24 AC. So, the higher level you go, like anything that you're proficient with at first level, you get a +2 to those rolls, even if nothing in your modifier. It's just your proficiency bonus is a +2. By the time you get to level 18 or 19, I can't remember which right now, your proficiency bonus is changed to a +6. So something with a 24 armor class, without anything other than your proficiency bonus, you can hit on an 18 or higher. So you already have a 15% chance to hit before you do that. Then if you add in your modifier, which is probably going to be a 20 at that point, if you're doing if you're using something that you use a lot, that's going to add an extra 25%. So you go from a 15% to a 40% chance. So all of those things, and that's on the most difficult thing in the game to hit. You now have a 40% chance, and if you add anything else to that, you add advantage to it. That's adding roughly about a +3.5. So roughly about another 15%. Now you're over 50%. If you have a +1 or +2 to something, that's going to add even more. And again, if you go down to something that only has a 20 AC or a 19 or an 18, you are going to be hitting the vast majority of times. And if you have anything that allows you to re-roll attacks or something, everything just makes it that much easier to hit. So creating something for anything that has attack rolls requires you understanding hitting and missing. If you take that out completely, where anytime you choose to use something, it's going to work, I'm going to almost guarantee all the abilities in this game are going to look underpowered when you compare them to 4th edition is going to be the best comparison. You guys will see why in a second here. Because again, they never miss. The reason why things look a lot more powerful in 5th edition or anything with that is because they can miss, or creatures can save. And again, saves are very, very different from attack rolls. Saves, especially once you get to higher levels, creatures start having 10, 11, 12, plus 13 saving throws, and legendary creatures get legendary resistances, where they just get to choose that they succeed. So again, that is a massive part of balancing, and by taking that out, that changes the entire balancing equation. And so that in and of itself, I find interesting. I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's an interesting thing. And I want to see how it plays out. Because I've never heard of an RPG that you never miss in. To me, that almost sounds like you've got aim hacks on or something. Like missing is a part of the RPG experience. In my life, I have never played a game where you can't miss. Whether it's a video game, whether it's a tabletop RPG, whether it's a first-person shooter, you always have the chance to miss. And that's true about life, and that's true about combat. You don't always hit your target. There's a lot of reasons why you might not hit your target. So I find it very, very interesting that they've changed. They've just gone away with the idea of missing, mostly because it slows down the game. Like it, hate it, whatever you want to say. Making separate attack and damage rolls slows down the game every single time. It's not a massive slowdown, and it's acceptable for 99.9% of RPGs. People just go, well, if I want this to work the way I want it to, then we have to add this tiny bit of slowdown. With this, it's not going to happen. I find that fascinating. Then it talks about this negotiation thing, and again, this whole section feels very much, well, we're going to, and again, this is what it feels like. I'm not saying this is what it is. I think, Matt, if you're watching this, first of all, you need to make better choices with your life, because there's significantly better things you can do with your time than watch me drone on about this. So if you are watching, though, I sincerely appreciate it. As much as you're a fantastic writer, these are very poor descriptions of something that I'll go over in a second here, because these are significantly better and explain it much better. Now, part of that is because these are longer and you have more words that you can use to explain them. But this thing here, what this game is not, makes me feel like this is a combat simulator. And then when I read this thing, which we'll go over in just a second here, I realize very, very quickly that it's not a combat simulator. But your description here is really, really bad. And I understand why you do this from a marketing perspective. I understand exactly why this is the way it is. These are marketing pitches. This is not me talking to Matt. This is me talking to everyone else. These are marketing pitches. This is meant to get the target audience interested in it. And the target audience for this game is for people that don't want to deal with encumbrance and, tracking your rations and all that minutia that tends to just slow games down. And they don't want to have to look at a big map and then roll their dice and find out how many times they have to make the right check before they get to the thing that they really want to do. That is what this section is designed to get interested in. This is people that are tired of minutia that doesn't make the game more fun. Realism is great, but if we wanted realism, we could go outside. We play games to have fun, and sometimes realistic isn't fun. The real world, most of the time, I will go out on a limb here and say the real world, most of the time, is not fun. And because of that, this is designed to get the people that don't want that, because those are going to be your target audience for this game. Which, again, from a marketing perspective, is a perfectly valid move. You do 100% want to target a very specific market. It is essential for getting your product sold and getting your product recognition out there, because just because that's your target market does not mean that those are the only people that are ever going to buy your game. But if you solidly get your target market, they will sell your game for you. So I get why you did this. I think it was a bad idea. Again, I think it will be effective, but I think there were better ways to phrase this, especially since there really isn't a limit on how long you can make. At least I don't believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong. There isn't really a limit to how long you can make these things for a Backerkit thing or a Kickstarter thing. Your limitation is going to be the longer you make it, the less people are going to read of it. So anything at the top, everyone's going to read, and anything at the bottom, very few people are going to read. But this is right at the top. This is the second or the third section. It could have been worded a little bit better and had a little bit more explanation if you wanted people to think that this is not a combat simulator, because that's what this says to me, which again is perfectly fine. Combat simulators are great. There's tons of them that exist, but I feel that this is misselling the product, and misselling a product is a great way to run into some massive issues. One of my favorite examples of this, there was a movie that came out, I think it must have been in 2014, called Tammy, with, I can't remember her name. She played Suki on Gilmore Girls, and she's really famous, and I can't remember her name right now. What is her name? Melissa McCarthy. There we go. She's brilliant. She's an absolutely phenomenal actress. She really, really is. And so this movie, Tammy, at least I think it was, she did a couple movies that year. And if I remember correctly, Tammy was marketed like every other Melissa McCarthy movie, because she'd done Bridesmaids, and she was so funny in Bridesmaids. And she is a brilliant comedic actress. She really, really is. But Tammy was not a comedy movie. And the marketing for it, all the trailers, cut out every funny part in the movie and made a trailer out of it, and made it look like it was just this laugh out loud comedy fest. And Tammy, as much as it was marketed and people claim it to be a comedy movie, isn't. It is a dramatic role with comic bits in it. And Melissa McCarthy does a wonderful performance for one of her early dramatic roles. And it really, really is good. It's very, very impressive. But it was marketed as a comedy movie, and everyone thought of Melissa McCarthy as a comedic actress. And so when they went and they saw this movie where the majority of the movie you're not laughing, they said, well, this is a dumb movie. It's stupid. I don't want to be here. It's dumb. And the movie got panned by critics and a bunch of other things because everyone went into it with the expectation that, well, I'm going to be just laughing my ass off because it's Melissa McCarthy. And I saw the trailer and she was like falling over stuff and she was getting drunk and it was really funny. And the movie is about so much more than that. To be fair, I do not believe it was an Oscar-worthy role. But for a first like massive jump into more dramatic work, I thought it was a great movie. And that's what I fear about this little blurb here is people are going to get the idea that, no, this is a combat simulator. And then they're going to go and they're going, what's all this talking doing in my combat simulator? I don't want no talk in my combat simulator. I want blood in my combat simulator. And this little bit here doesn't really assuage that particular worry. Because, again, I'll read the whole thing. We love fighting monsters, but there's more to the game than that. Certain NPCs can be negotiated with to get them to change their allegiance or reconsider their actions. Technically, any NPC can be negotiated with, but there's usually only one per adventure. These NPCs have stats like patience and interest. We also plan on rules for research and crafting to let players unlock ancient secrets and build wondrous marvels. We have ideas for how to make language fluency relevant, better rules for wealth, renown, but it's unknown how much of that we can fit in a 400-page rulebook. It's nice for them to talk about the length of the book because, again, depending on the book, I've seen some rulebooks that crack 600 pages, and I've seen other ones that are barely 200. 400 nice is a nice amount for a core rulebook. If you're not going the D&D route where you have your player's handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and then Monster Manual, 400 feels good to me. And they are going to have they're going to have a Monster Manual too. They have a name for it, and I can't remember what it's called right now, but they're going to have a rule book and then a Monster Manual, and I think that's a good way to go about it. Having the DM stuff and the player stuff in the same book, I think works better than the way that D&D does it. So, and I believe both of those are going to be released at the same time, unlike how D&D does it, where they release first your player's handbook and then they'll release a DM's guide and then they'll release a Monster Manual. And so to get the whole system, you have to wait like 6 or 8 months. So anyway, so this whole thing here, certain NPCs can be negotiated, meaning most NPCs don't. And then they actually clarify this. There's only one per adventure that you can negotiate with. So to me, that says, no, there really isn't negotiation here. There's one time in an entire adventure where negotiation can be used. And even then, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a massive thing. Like you can get them to change their allegiance or reconsider their actions. So reconsider means they're already taking that action. So if you don't do anything, they're just going to continue doing what they've already done. So if I read just this, all I'm getting is, cool, Matt Colville's making a combat simulator. Which again, I've already said, it's not what this is. We're going to get into what it actually is in a second here. But the person that wrote this, which would surprise me if it wasn't Matt. But it would also surprise me if it was exclusively Matt. As much as, again, Matt is a brilliant writer, running a campaign like this is incredibly complicated. And I actually have no idea if Matt Colville actually has any experience in marketing or anything like that. A lot of people think marketing is super easy. It's not. Again, I have a degree in the damn stuff. It's remarkably complicated. So I have no idea if he would feel confident enough in his marketing skills, either from having to market his own stuff, because, again, he writes a lot of stuff. He would have to understand a little bit of marketing, or if he's actually had some sort of training or instruction in how marketing works. But again, from a marketing perspective, I 100% understand why this was written the way it was. And it will be very effective in targeting a very specific market, which is very, very good. However, after reading the sample pages that we're going to go through in depth here in a second, I do not believe this is this is a good explanation of the game from what I read in the sample pages. Now, the sample pages may be the thing that are misinforming me. It may be that this is a wonderful description of what this is, and the sample pages are going to be changed because, again, they are exactly that. They're samples. The game ain't done yet. That's why he's raising money for it. In addition to like the actual design work, which takes a ton of time, something as simple as getting this 4-column layout is a pain in the ass. And it takes someone that actually understands layout design to do it. And people that actually understand layout design and are good at designing layouts do not come cheap. And what they do is not quick work. It takes a lot of work to build a book like this. And then getting it into a file that you can send to a printer and actually get it printed correctly is even more difficult. It is shocking how difficult it is to publish a book. Not that I've looked into it because I'm trying to write my own book, but it's nonsense. So the reason that they're raising all this money is not just to finish designing the book. I'm pretty certain that the majority of the design of the game is already done, at least in Matt's head. You know, kind of, I know the basics of how this system is going to work because he's described how the system works in here, and we actually have the first page of a class that we're going to talk about in a second here. So it makes sense that the majority of this money is not going to go towards designing the game. I think most of the design work is done. Most of this money is going to go towards everything else that is required to make a book actually publishable. Thing like artwork. This is gorgeous artwork. If you've seen, just look at this stuff. It's amazing. And this is what? Maybe like 2% of the art that's going to be required to be in the book. If you want the book to look really professionally done. And artwork is really important in a tabletop RPG because you want people to it's all about imagination, and by having artwork in there, you can kind of shape their imagination and kind of point their imagination in the right direction. So artwork, incredibly important. Here's a fun fact. Artists are not free, they're not cheap, and they're not quick. Nor should they be. It is an incredibly difficult job. And so paying them enough to get all the artwork that you need, and then after you get the artwork from the artist, you have to find a way to put it into the book, which requires getting that layout person back to go, hey, listen, you know how at first we were going to do this? Well, we got this artwork, and it's so amazing that we really don't want to cover any of it with text, which is what we were going to do before. So I need you to redesign the layout of this page so that we can put this in here. And I realize it's going to change the rest of the book because it's on like page 17 of a 400-page book, and that pushes everything. But that's what you get to do now. Congratulations. So yeah, anyway. So overall, my first impression of this is, it's going to be a combat simulator, which made me go, I'm into it. I'll probably pick this up sometime because it looks interesting. And then I got to the sample pages. And if you guys can read that, you have better eyes than I do. But they all have a little bup in here. You know what we're going to do? Because again, all of this is on the page there. I do not feel, by the way, Matt, if you're watching this and you're mad that I'm showing this stuff off, shoot me a message. We'll talk about something. But I firmly believe this is 100% within the realm of fair use because I am critiquing and talking about your particular item. So if there is some sort of issue, please just message me and we'll come up with something. First of all, I sincerely doubt Matt is ever going to see this video. Again, he has much better uses for his time. But if it does become an issue, I would never want to piss off Matt Colville. Despite the fact that, again, I've had arguments with him that he doesn't even know happened. I personally believe that were we to be put in the same room with the same Zoom call, I could have those arguments with him and leave on perfectly fine terms because he's a rational, logical adult. So anyway, let's talk about this stuff. So now we can see this is the actual sample page where it talks about what is this game And I'm not going to read everything here because there's a lot here. Something that I do kind of like, and this is just me speculating, but if you guys look at these words that are like bolded, underlined, and in a slightly different color, to me that looks like hyperlinks, which in a PDF, most of my favorite PDFs, when there are particular terms that are referencing something else in the book, you can actually set it up in a PDF that if you click on those words, they take you to the page. They're very, very nice. And so looking at this, this actually looks a lot like what I would see on D&D Beyond, where they have these kind of bolded words, and if you float over them, you get a little pop-up text. Again, this is just an image. None of this I can click on. Or I can click on it. It does that. And that doesn't do anything. It just zooms. But this looks like a digital copy to me. Which if they are considering doing some kind of digital version, I'm very, very happy. Whether they use Demiplane, with a lot of people are starting to go over Demiplane. I'm very, very excited about that because it's a great site. And I'm a huge fan of not having only one digital archive for RPGs in general. Like right now, if you want to have online character sheets and everything like that, you have D&D Beyond. And that's about it. There's websites where you can do character sheets, but you can't like save your characters or anything. And then Demiplane came around and they started doing cool stuff. Now there's like 3 or 4 different websites that will let you kind of store character sheets for different RPGs on the website, very similar to how D&D Beyond does it. So I don't know if they're planning on using something like that or this is just the font style that they've decided to use. But to me, it seems like bare minimum the PDF is going to be, I don't know if they call it indexed or something, but they're going to have the ability to kind of click on things to go where you want to go, which is really, really useful. But as you can see here, they talk about the tactical aspect of it. You play on a grid, and distance is measured in squares. You know what system measured things in squares? And like 4 really, really extremely loud people on the internet got mad because it broke their immersion? 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, everything was measured in squares. And even the shapes that you can make for like area spells were all based on squares, so that when you were playing it on a map with squares, like you have to do for 3rd edition because of all the positioning rules and nonsense built into that damn game, you don't have to sit there and wonder, well, they said cone, but, you know, technically this cone is like, you know, I can position the cone so like it barely, you know, kind of almost nicks the base of this mini, so that means that they're totally hit by it, right? Cones and squares and cylinders do not fit well on a grid-based map. They just don't. So in 4th edition, they made everything grid-based, and it was really, really nice. I don't know if they're going to be doing in this, but they do measure everything in squares. They talk about heroic. And they specifically talk about they expect the good guys to do good things, which that in and of itself I find kind of interesting because most RPGs do that and they never outright state it. And then again, it's the Tammy problem. It's the issue where people go into it expecting one thing, and then when they realize that their expectations are wrong, even if the thing that they're looking at is a perfectly good product, they came in expecting one thing, they will instantly decide that the product is bad because they thought it was something that it wasn't. And that's entirely a marketing problem. And that's what this is basically attempting to assuage. They're trying to make sure that this is not going to be the thing. And so they go, this is heroic. We expect you to play heroic characters. Doesn't mean you have to, but everything in the game is going to be based on that. So if you decide that you want to play a much more kind of gritty anti-hero style campaign, you can do that. Understand that most of the options are going to assume you're not playing that. So you will probably have to make some adjustments. And then they talk about the cinematic thing, which in my personal opinion, is really hard to pull off in a tabletop RPG. I've tried doing it. I have this system that I call cinematic combat, where instead of people make attack rolls, I tell them, describe to me what you want your character to do, and feel free to use your abilities and stuff like that, but visually describe what you see happening in your mind, and then I will decide what I think the role would be to do that, and then depending on how you roll, we will describe how it affects monsters. We're not going to track hit points. We're not going to track anything. I just want this to be a very cool cinematic thing where you don't have to worry about the rules of combat. And I've never had players that have been able to understand that. Every campaign that I've tried it in, they're like, so I'm going to use my action to do this, and then my bonus. No, don't worry about action economy. This is just describe a really cool thing your guy is going to do. Okay. So I'm going to make a sleight of hand check. No, you're not. You're going to describe... And I never could get players to understand that ever. And it annoyed the hell out of me. Because it makes perfect sense to me, but I just could not explain it. So the idea that they're talking about cinematic... They're actually not talking about that. They're actually talking about the boring stuff that you don't need to worry about. Like here, we'll go over here. They talk about, when Sir Vanzer, the Draconian Fury, leaps onto a goblin war spider, cleaving through the goblin, riding the creature in a single turn, you can see this in your mind. It feels like a movie. It doesn't feel simply like you rolled well, but like an epic scene, completely slow motion, and a Carpenter Brut soundtrack. I do not recognize that name, but I'm assuming it's a wonderful composer. Or here, you can imagine your character doing or saying these things. In all this confusion is a good name for the Shadow's ability to slip out of melee and retreat to safety. The text of this ability says how it works, but the name creates a visual that explains how it's working. You know another system that instead of just giving you stat blocks that said, hey, this is mechanically what it does, it would name and flavor all of the abilities that you had, and it called them powers. And people got really mad because they said, well, that's like what video games do, and that means this is a stupid video game and not a tabletop RPG. 4th edition. Again, everything about 4th edition. This is not me trying to detract from this. I am so excited. I am so excited that Matt is embracing the best parts of 4th edition and basically turning into... I'm going to assume... that this is going to be... I'm going to take all the stuff that I liked from 4th edition and all the stuff that I liked from 5th edition and all the stuff I liked from all these other RPGs, and I'm going to find a way to fit them together so that I can play the exact kind of game that I want. And so much of this 4th edition stuff is just making me so happy. And again, this is not me trying to knock Matt Colville's creativity. Anyone that has ever tried to change something from 4th edition to 5th edition or transfer things between editions knows that it is ungodly difficult and takes an incredible mind to do it. So this is not me knocking Matt Colville for taking inspiration from 4th edition. This is me complimenting the fact that he's able to do this because it's extremely difficult. And it just shows that he really is a phenomenal game designer if this is what he's doing. Again, I can't be 100% certain that's what he's doing, but it sure as hell feels like it. And it's exciting. And then it talks about fantasy. Yeah, it's fantasy. And it talks about like the different kinds of fantasy, but this is my favorite part of this entire section is just this right here. And I can't highlight it because it's just a picture, but just, it's got dragons and stuff. It's such a great line. It's so good. If this is what I could expect from reading this, because again, I read a lot of RPG source books, and some of them are a joy to read. The Essence 20 stuff, there's so much flavor and fun in those books that I can read them cover to cover and never feel bad about it. And then I can pick up a D&D source book or campaign setting or something like that, and it feels like I'm reading a textbook. And that's not a bad thing because, in certain situations, textbooks are extremely useful. But it's not enjoyable a lot of the time. And so if he's going to be writing stuff in this kind of passive voice, passive kind of... I'm going to be crucified by using the wrong term, but I believe this is kind of like a second person point of view. I like that. I like the fact that a book can feel more like a conversation than a textbook. So, yeah, love that. And so that's the first one. And then the second one, they start talking about building a heroic narrative. And basically, the kind of basics of the of how the system works. Again, Matt, if you are watching this, my one bit of advice that I beg that you do this. Every other RPG, well, not every other, but most of the RPGs that mimic Dungeons and Dragons, because Dungeons and Dragons does this, introduces character options before they introduce the mechanics of how the game works. Essence 20 does that. And I've said every time I've opened every one of their books, I've said you wrote your book backwards. Take the how to play the game chapter, and instead of putting it after the character options, put it first. Have your introduction chapter and then the how to play the game chapter. And then you can talk about all the character work. I don't know if that's what you're already planning on doing, or if you're going to copy what Dungeons and Dragons have been doing for 50 years. But I highly recommend, if you want new players, people that have never played an RPG before, if you want them to play your game, put the explanation for how the game is played before you talk about character creation or anything like that. Because what always happens is, if you have a new person, or if you have just a new system where things don't work the way that you're expecting them to, when they're looking over the character options, it is all gobbledygook. You could literally just write random symbols and it would make just as much sense, because we don't understand why any of this stuff is important. I had that issue with Essence 20 and a couple other books that I've done in-depth reviews and Discovering New Dragons on, where I just look at the book and I'm like, I would love to know why this is as cool as it is. This character class sounds really cool, but then you talk about the mechanics and I don't understand what any of this means. What in the hell is an upshift and why does it matter? Because you're telling me one of my abilities for this class is I can upshift this. I don't. Upshift to me is part of driving. And am I going to have to play this in a car? Because that seems like it's going to violate some laws if I'm playing an RPG while I'm driving. Like, that seems like distracted driving, and that's illegal in all 50 states. And internationally, I believe it's illegal as well. Most countries with cars, if you're playing RPGs while you're driving, you're in trouble. So why are you telling me? And also, I don't drive stick shift. I drive an automatic, which shifts automatically for me. So do I have to buy a stick shift car to be able to play? By the way, for those of you that have never played an Essence 20 game and are wondering what in the hell I'm talking about, upshifting is a mechanic in the game, and it just changes the dice that you're rolling. But they use a word that already exists in the English language and has a very defined thing. I thought it was funny. Anyway, so going back to here, he basically starts describing how the game is run. And so this is another thing that feels very reminiscent of 4th edition, but just better. Is the idea of victories. Victories, basically, whenever you win a combat, which is, from what I'm reading here, is probably going to be your most common way to get these victories. You earn what's called a victory. And once you start earning victories, when we look at the example character that they show us, as you gain more victories, your character just becomes more powerful. So at the beginning of the day, your character is less powerful than he will be at the end of the day. Every single time. And it also means, unlike with 5th edition, where they claim that you should be having 68 combats per day, and probably about, 1 or 2 short rests throughout the day, and that's how they balanced everything. The system itself does not really incentivize running that many combats, nor is it really feasibly possible to run that many combats, because combat just takes so long in a single adventuring day, which... unless you want a single adventuring day to take, 8 hours of real-time playing, then of course you could do that. But most people don't want one day in-game to be the exact same as a day in real life. For this, it sounds like not only is combat going to be relatively quick, because you don't have to do attack rolls, and that will cut a lot of time out of combat, but you are going to actually be incentivized to do more combat in a day, because as you go further, you'll just become more and more powerful. Not like super overpowered or anything, but there's an incentive to have another round of another combat in a day. And then they also have victories after non-combat challenges, Which again, so it shows that not everything is going to be about a combat simulator. Which again, the kind of marketing pitch you gave me did not make that feel like this is not going to be a combat simulator. And so this talking about other things you can do that are not combat kind of conflicts with what they were talking about there. Like they do have stuff here where I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to see if I can do this in a way that you guys can read it. Not really. I need it this big. I'll get it small enough for you guys to read in just a second. But when your hero successfully overcome a big challenge that doesn't involve combat, the director, which is what I'm assuming they're calling the GM, can award you 1 victory. Such challenges can include things like particularly complicated and deadly trap, a negotiation, a complex test, a complicated puzzle, or the execution of a clever idea that avoids a battle. So even in non-combat challenges, they still talk about combat. So combat's going to be a very, very large part of this. But they talk about a particularly complicated and deadly trap. To me, that is part of dungeon crawling, is negotiating traps and getting around stuff like that. And they said this is not a dungeon crawler. This is not about dungeon crawling. But one of the things in here specifically talks about things that are in dungeons. Complicated puzzles are another things that show up in dungeons a lot. So that's why I say that original, what this game is not, is just poorly worded. Because this makes me think that you are going to be able to run some really interesting and unique dungeon crawls. You just aren't going to have to make sure you have enough rations, which most people already don't do. Like, again, I have 2 campaigns that have been running for at least 4 or 5 years. One of those 2 has been running for close to 8. They have never bought rations in 5 years. So the fact that you don't have to keep track of rations in this game, you don't have to keep track of rations in D&D. It has not changed a single thing, nor has it changed any game that I have ever run. So if that is your pitch for this, it's a bad pitch, because you're effectively creating a problem that doesn't exist and solving it. And again, this is such a better description for what the game is. Again, it's also a much longer description. You can't put this in a marketing tab, but I think there are better ways to phrase that particular section than the way that you did. And this is why. And then victories reset. This is the thing that I find the most interesting. So you build up these victories, and then when you go to sleep, all your victories turn into experience. And they don't really talk about how you use experience to upgrade your character, because I would assume, because it's just giving away too much of the game. And this is more than enough to get me excited about this. But as you can see, it makes it really interesting. And again, this is actually reminiscent of an aspect of 4th edition, which was basically you had this thing called an action point. And what it did was it basically gave you an additional action on your turn. And it was really, really useful. And as you got higher in level, spending your action point also gave you additional bonuses based on your Paragon path and eventually your Epic Destiny. And it was a really cool system. And then basically every other encounter that you got in, you would get another action point. And you could only ever spend 1 action point per encounter. So the more times you got into combat, the more times you could use this action point, and it always felt good to use an action point, because abilities in 4th edition were all about pizzazz and big numbers and the things like that. It was very, very cool. And burning your action point always felt really powerful, because now you were doubling the amount of awesome that you could do. And it always turned into something very cool. The victory system feels like, because every time you got another action point, it was called earning a milestone. And there were other aspects of 4th edition that used milestones, but they really didn't catch on. and they weren't really well implemented throughout the rest of the thing. So for the most part, milestone was just synonymous with action point. But victories feels like an upgraded version of milestones from 4th edition. And I liked the idea of milestones from 4th edition. They were just never capitalized on. And Matt here has taken a good idea and turned it into a great idea, where now it is actually linked with how your character plays. And I think that is phenomenal. And then this whole section on bag of rats ain't heroic is basically just telling people, yeah, no, you don't get to cheese the system by going, I see a rat. I want to roll initiative to kill the rat. Now I get a victory. No, victories are only earned if you do something heroic. And killing rats, not that heroic. Unless they're really big rats. Then we can call them heroic. And then we talk about recoveries. Hey guys, you know what system had this thing where how much you healed was based on a percentage of your hit points? That's right. The square hole. That's right. D&D 4th edition. Healing surges in 4th edition are the best thing about 4th edition, because it meant that your leader, whomever they were, could heal anybody and it would be useful. Whereas in 5th edition, healing is mostly bubkiss. In combat, healing is almost worthless unless you are taking someone from 0 hit points to above, or you are burning one of those massive spells like heal, where they get a massive chunk of hit points all at once. Those are the only time that healing is good. And depending on the character, sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's completely worthless, because like barbarians just have so many hit points that giving them, 46 hit points feels like nothing to them. Whereas giving, in the same combat, giving that to a rogue feels amazing. Healing surges fix that. Well, let's talk about recoveries. Each hero has a limited number of recoveries that they can use to heal themselves. When you spend a recovery, you regain health equal to your healing value, which is 1/3 your health maximum. It's healing surges! He's bringing back healing surges! I may be getting a little excited about this, guys. Also, these are better than healing surges because, again, healing surges were 1/4 of your hit points. This is 1/3. So even more. And I will almost guarantee... I have not seen this. This is a prediction from my mind because I'm psychic. I will guarantee whatever abilities allow you to heal other characters, what they're going to say is, when you use this ability, target character can use one of their recoveries. And that's how you phrase it, so that healing is going to be effective for everybody, because it's based on the character that you're healing, and healing a barbarian is going to heal them more than healing a wizard, because wizards just don't have as many hit points and don't need as many hit points. Barbarians do. I love this. I love everything about this. It is the most amazing, wonderful thing. I miss healing surges so bad. I really, really do. I miss healing being a viable thing to do in an RPG, because I play so much. I play so much Fabula Ultima. It is nauseating. Or not Fabula Ultima, I'm sorry. I play so much D&D. It is nauseating how there can be really, really cool characters, and the healing is just really not that useful. And it's significantly better to just dish out damage. Yeah, so I'm so excited about that. And then recoveries in combat, recoveries outside of combat, regaining recoveries. Oh, we also forgot to talk about heroic resources. Heroic resources effectively each... from what I'm reading here, each class is going to have their own limited resource, which again it's a balancing design thing that I think is really useful. If you look at 5th edition, we already have quite a few classes that have their own limited resources. Monks have keys, which is turning into discipline, which calling something DP is a really dumb idea. It's almost as dumb as calling it 1 D&D, but obviously the people working at Wizards don't understand how words work, because they just keep, or whoever's naming things just doesn't understand how words work. Enough of that. But like monks have key, druids have numbers of wild shapes, barbarians have numbers of rages, battlemaster fighters have maneuver dice, things like that. So limited resources that are class based already kind of exist, but they're not particularly well implemented in fifth edition. If you will notice, in both of the classes that I've released for 5th edition, the Dragon Knight and the Blood Knight, I have a knight thing when I create classes. I just like knights. I think they're cool. And I think marshals are vastly underrepresented in D&D because casters can do so many cooler things. So I like making martial classes that can do cool shit. And knights are just cool. So anyway, both of my classes have their own unique limited resource. The Dragon Knight has Draconic Power Points. The Blood Knight has Blood Points. I'm not a great namer either. However, I think I'm still better at naming than Wizards of the Coast is. And the way that you earn them is very, very different. But it means if you multi-class, it's very easy to figure out how much you can use any particular abilities. In kind of base 5th edition, the most common limited resource is spell slots. And I believe every class has a way to get spell slots aside from, I think, Barbarian. They have a way to get some form. I guess monks don't get... thank you. Monks don't get that... monks don't get a way to use spell slots, but they do get a way to cast spells. So yeah, and the spell slot system, it's a nice system overall. Vancian magic works perfectly fine, but they started using it as the limited resource for a lot of different classes, especially once you got to Tasha's, where you can burn a spell slot of this much or higher to get this ability back. And so they kind of had this group limited resource, and it got confusing real quick. Basically what this is talking about is heroic resources. Each class has their own limited resource that they can use to power their abilities. And I'm going to assume, again, they have not talked about multi-classing in this as far as I can tell, but I'm going to assume that heroic resources are going to be a way to kind of simplify multi-classing, so that if you do want to use one of these abilities, you're not going to be able to kind of do like the Sorlock thing, where they're like, well, I can turn spell slots into sorcery points, and every time we take a short rest, I can turn... I get all my spell slots back for being a warlock, so I have infinite sorcery points. And it doesn't work that way, but, you know, a moron on YouTube said that it does, and now everyone believes it. So I'm a big fan of classes having a specific limited resource to them. As long as you're not getting like 3, 4, 5, 6 different resources for the same class, you know, keep it as limited as possible while still allowing complexity. Again, complexity for complexity's sake is not a benefit. You only add enough complexity so that you can do something that you can't do without it. And that sounds like that. Then they talk about resting, and then they actually give us, I think this is all the classes in the core book. And the first thing I notice in here is there is no monk. Matthew Colville, where's the monk? Just kidding. So as you can see here, the classes themselves are really interesting, and I don't want to say generic because they're not. They're very, very unique. But they're described in a way that doesn't completely limit you to how you have to play them. Like if you look at a paladin is described in a very, very specific way. They wear heavy armor. They use a big weapon or a sword and a shield. Like they very, very much tell you, like when you choose a paladin, you kind of already know what equipment you're going to be using. It's built into them. Playing Fabula Ultima, all the classes are designed kind of vaguely enough that while, yes, they do give you a very good idea of a way to play them, and the artwork will kind of emphasize that, you don't have to play them that way, and they're not written in a way that requires you to. Like in the Paladin example, Paladin smiting specifically is designed to happen with a weapon attack, specifically a melee weapon attack. So paladins are almost forced to use some sort of melee weapon. You don't get ranged paladins using bows. And from what I'm reading here, it sounds like they are going to be giving you guidance on how you might want to build the character. When you look at this stuff, like a really great example here. Let's look at the censor here. Censor. A censor places divine seals upon foes to deal damage and hamper them with supernatural power. These same seals are your heroic resources. Your best characteristics are might and presence. Play a censor if you want to be a hunter in league with a holy order dedicated to a god and to specialize in fighting tough creatures one-on-one. First of all, censor is an Avenger from 4th edition. An Avenger is my favorite class! I love this so much. But, and when I say it's an Avenger from 4th edition, it's not. Because the Avenger does not play like this at all. But it's the same basic idea of an Avenger is, in 4th edition, an Avenger worked for a god and basically did the jobs that other people. They were the active hand of a deity. They went out, they killed things. That was what their job was. And a censor kind of fills that same role, but they do it in a very different way. This thing about divine seals sounds fascinating to me. It sounds like this could be such an interesting class to play. And then there's other things that make this feel like 4th edition. The fact that your best characteristics are might and presence. That was something, I think I've built characters on here before, and I've shown you guys when you were looking at characters in 4th edition, like the 4th edition Player's Handbook, any of the 3 of them, it would tell you what your main stat was, and then it would let you choose between 2 other stats. And what that meant is your main stat was probably going to be the thing that all of your powers used for their attack and damage rolls. And then the other 2 ones would probably give you a benefit depending on which powers that you used. And from what I'm reading here, it looks like it's going to be the same thing here. So Censor is going to use might and presence for most of their abilities. And that also means, again, once we look at the one bit of a character that they gave us, this stuff will make more sense. But this is making me really, really excited. And then Conduit. Conduit, as far as I can tell, feels like your more classical cleric-style character. A Conduit wields power granted to them by one or more gods, healing and buffing their allies while smiting enemies with holy light. You have 2 heroic resources: Virtue for helping your fellow heroes, and Wrath for harming your enemies. This sounds fucking epic! Your best characteristics are might and intuition. Play a Conduit if you want to be a great healer who can punish enemies with divine rays of light and corrupting energy. How is this so cool? Oh, man. It's one of the things I missed so much about 4th edition was that clerics in 4th edition were massively badass. Because in general, your heals were almost all exclusively minor actions. So you would use your minor action to heal, which would actually be worth something. Then you'd use your major action to do nonsense. Call down a pillar of fire from heaven. Conjure a giant scythe that cuts through all of your enemies. And sometimes those major actions would allow you to do that and then also buff people at the same time or also heal people at the same time. Clerics were fucking badass in 4th edition. And a Conduit sounds fucking badass. Then we go to Elementalists. It's your wizard, but it's a badass looking one. Elementalists harness the elemental energy of the timescape to create fiery explosions, violent windstorms, rocky armor, and pummeling waves. Your heroic resources, quintessence. I really like the word quintessence. It's been showing up everywhere. So bravo, Matt, for using a cool word. Your best characteristics are endurance and intuition. Play at Elementalist if you want to control the elements and the battlefield. Controllers! I say this so often. I miss controllers. 4th edition had an entire sub-rank thing, whatever it was called, focus, called controllers. And they were massively awesome to play. And they were super cool. Controllers were great. And they don't really exist in 5th edition. There's some subclasses that give you more controllery style stuff, but you don't have classes that were built around control. An Elementalist sounds like a controller, and it's so cool. Fury is a barbarian. Your heroic resources, rage. Still cool. Barbarian's just never been my thing. They're perfectly fine. I love barbarians, but it's just never been the character I want to play. This is the other one that I just went, Matt Colville, you're my hero. The Operator. An operator pilots a frame. A large mechanical suit of armor decked out with weapons. You're fucking Iron Man! Or you could be a Vonzer pilot, or an armored core, or whatever giant mech piloting Gundams, whatever you want to call it, you are a mech pilot. Now, they're not 40 stories tall, but you're still a mech pilot. It's so cool. Your heroic resource is power, because of course it is. And then, in the middle of combat, your what is it? Your conduit can yell over to you and go, "Hey, I need help over here," and you can answer with, "I'm giving us all she's got, Captain. The dilithium crystals have run out of power. I don't know what we're going to do." And then punch with your giant mech robot, dude. So pumped for that. It's just everything about this seems amazing. The Shadow, it's your rogue, which I totally think that if I want to make my Aether character that I love, probably would make him a Shadow. Yeah, because listen to this. So, Shadow moves with stealth and grace, sneaking up on foes and delivering devastating assassination attacks. I love how my brain has just decided that we're going to read this as like a video made by like a realtor describing a property. Yes, as you can see, this 24,000 square foot property has wonderful beachfront views, and a shadow moves with stealth and grace, sneaking up on foes and delivering devastating assassination attacks. Your heroic resources insight. Your best characteristics are agility and reason. Play a shadow if you want to be a master assassin and thief who deals lots of damage while teleporting all over the battlefield. I love teleportation. If I had a mutant power, I would want it to be teleportation. If I had a mutant power, I would want it to be teleportation, but it would not be teleportation. I would probably have like the mutant power of like empathic ability. Like I could read other people's emotions. Like that would be my mutant power. And it'd be really useful, don't get me wrong. Like the ability to read other people's emotions, crazy useful. Like Deanna Troi, most useful person on the bridge. Really, really useful person. But like I want to be a teleporter. I want to be, Nightcrawler, because it's super badass. So yeah, Shadow already. Yeah, Tactician. This is another one that I really, really like. Again, based kind of on what I'm assuming is kind of inspired by the Warlord from 4th edition, which was probably the greatest healer in the game, because they were a leader, but a lot of their abilities basically let them give their action to someone else to do something. And so when a Warlord was played really, really well, they could absolutely turn the tide of unwinnable battles, because they could give the rogue the ability to sneak attack twice in a round, or they could let the wizard fire off 2 daily spells or things like they were massively useful. And that's what the Tactician sounds like. And then Talent. This is another one. Talent uses telekinesis to toss their foes around. Of course, Matt Colville came up with a way to add psionics to his game, something that D&D has struggled with for 30 years. Matt is like, yeah, we'll just make a psychic class. Who cares? We can do it. And then Troubadour's the Bard. So overall, like I said, these 2 pages massively changed how I thought this game was going to go. These 2 things, which is literally 6, 7, and apparently we're missing 8 and 9. So there's a page in between these 2. And then we have 10 and 11. And they have just made me massively pumped. And then the very next page is this. And this is the thing that is getting me really, really excited. This is a character page. Like, blatantly obvious that that's what it is. But, I mean, check this out. Tactician is kind of your standard fighter from what you can see here. But when you start looking at the stuff that they can do, we're going to go over here and look at it. So, character scores, 3 might, 3 reason. So as you can see, compared to D&D, that basically uses, well, you may have 10 intelligence, but actually means you have 0. It looks like they're just taking away the transfer of, because I think people have just gotten so used to the idea that a 16 dexterity means that you have a +3 on dexterity checks, and people have just kind of accepted that 16 somehow equals 3 for no apparent reason. So what it sounds like to me is they're just getting rid of ability scores and are just, you track everything through modifiers, which makes perfect sense. And they talk about your health. You start with a lot of health, which again is a very 4th edition thing. Everything was big in 4th edition. They talk about the skills. I have no idea, because there's nowhere else in these sample pages where they talk about skills. We'll talk about kits in a second here, because kits are really exciting me. And then every class apparently has a basic attack. So this is how, and this is something that, again, is kind of from 4th edition, but again, it was a bad idea in 4th edition that they've turned into a good idea in this. So as you can see, precise attack, this is 100%. This is 100% taken from 4th edition, where you have the name of the attack, and then it has keywords, and you'll use those keywords to do it. It talks about the type and how you're going to use it. Talks about your distance. Melee 1 means within 1 square, and then damage 2d6 plus Rhea. Don't know what Rhea is. We'll figure that out later. But Rhea, reason. Oh, 2d6 plus reason. That's interesting. Cool. So yeah, all of your abilities are going to be powers from 4th edition, which again, were not a bad thing. They made marshals super awesome, and they let casters still be super awesome. And then resistant rolls, TN's, I'm assuming that's target number. So when you use an ability that forces the target to make a resistance roll, target number is 7 plus reason. So again, we already have saving throws. They're calling them resistance rolls, which again makes perfect sense. And just use it a different name for the same basic thing. And then you have your features. They talk about the focus. They talk about triggered actions. So this is just something that you can do. Creature makes an attack against you or an ally within your reach. And effect, the attack's damage is halved. Spend 1 focus. The damage is reduced by another 1 d8. So in this particular thing here, again, because attacks always hit, you can't make them miss, apparently. So this just halves the damage, and then if you burn a focus, it reduces it by a specific number. Well, depending on how much damage the attack was doing, theoretically, burning a focus might make the attack do 0 damage. So that, in and of itself, I find really, really interesting, because mixing halved and then flat, or not flat numbers, but rolled numbers, creates a lot of ways that you can modify this with feats or whatever they're going to call them in this, because I guarantee they'll have something like that, and further abilities that you get. And then you also get this taunt thing. And so you can see you have this focus, and then you have 2 different ways to use the focus. And so this time freeze, that's a free action. Distance anything within 10 squares, 1 creature. The creature is taunted until the start of your next turn. It doesn't explain what taunted is, but if I'm going to infer from the fact that so much of this has been inspired by 4th edition, I'm going to assume taunted means that they get some sort of debilitation if they attack someone other than you. That also exists in 5th edition, but it just doesn't work anywhere near as well in 5th edition as it did in 4th. So I'm assuming that's what it does. And the fact that you can do it from up to 10 squares away, which if squares are 5 foot like they normally are, you can do that from 50 feet away. And one of the things that used to be, and then if you burn focus, you can taunt multiple creatures with it. One of the things that used to be a viable strategy for tanks in 4th edition is you would mark, they called it marking in 4th edition, you would mark a target that was so far away that they couldn't come and attack you, because either they were engaged with someone else or there were people in the way. And sword mages specifically were built around this idea, as you would mark someone that you weren't fighting, because the person you were fighting is already probably going to be swinging at you. But you'd mark someone else, and then my personal favorite sword mage was I can't remember what it was called. It was like the chasing sword mage or something like that. But basically, depending on the kind of flavor of sword mage you created, when they did the mark, different things would happen. And my personal favorite one was if you marked someone and they attacked someone that wasn't you, you could teleport over to them as a reaction and then attack them. And that was one of my favorite things in the world to do, because I would mark someone far away, I'd hit the dude that I was fighting here, and then the other dude would attack someone, and I would just go, peace out, and then I would go over and fight this other dude. And it was really, really fun, and because I played the character really, really poorly, I generally ended up unconscious through most combats. But I eventually learned how to play the damn character. But that was super, super fun, and I could definitely see taunt working in a very similar thing, depending on how taunt functions in the game. But it's very, very interesting. And then we look at these other, and this is all first level stuff. So when you have at least one victory, and this is where victories start mattering, you gain each of the following benefits once per combat encounter and can only use once per turn. When you allow an ally to spend a recovery to regain health, you regain extra health equal to your victories. When an ally within 10 squares of you moves, they can move an extra number of squares equal to your victories. So as you can see, the commander tactician kind of thing here, the victories completely factor into how they play in combat. And then first level stratagems. This is another thing that D&D had, is your first level at-will powers all had a name. And so they're calling them stratagems. And as you can see, you know several unique martial techniques called stratagems that allow you to defend allies, lock down dangerous foes, and issue commands that grant your allies more movement and actions in combat. Signature stratagems. You know two of the stratagems you can perform at will called signature stratagems. Whenever you see a signature stratagem, you gain one or whenever you use a signature stratagem, you gain one focus. You can choose your stratagems from the following list. It only shows two here, which again I think for a preview is perfect. You can see the first one, cleave. Very classic. Attack, weapon, action, distance, melee 1, target 1 creature. Damage that. Effect, another target within your reach takes might damage, gain 1 focus. So, very much you hit one dude and then nick another. And then, come on then. Range 10, uses your action. You pull the target a number of squares equal to your reason. If the target ends their movement within your reach, you can make a basic attack against them, gain 1 focus. Come on, then. We all know what this is. I mean, come on. You know what it is. I know it's in. Matt, if you're watching, we get it. Get over here! I mean, that's what it is. It is super cool. I love this. Yeah, for a controller style thing, come on, then could be massive. Being able to yank someone over and blast them with an attack is huge. And that's all they give us for this really, really awesome, amazing, cool-looking class. And there's so much that we don't know about it, but I'm still massively excited. And again, guys, I don't think you guys, or you may not quite understand. This is the fighter. This is the baby class for babies. This is the class that you give the guy that's never run an RPG before. By the way, I would not give a brand new player the tactician unless I chose non-control effects, because that would get confusing really quick. But everybody thinks of the fighter as, you know, the really boring class. The human fighter, you go up and you just hit somebody. And the human fighter here is massively cool. Like, check this out, dude. It's I want this to be a thing now. Matt, can you make this a thing now? I want to play it tomorrow. I'm super thrilled about this. The next thing they talk about is dwarves. This, I really, really love this right here. Why dwarves are best. Again, I love the kind of conversational tone. Where it's, I mean, this is basically, you know, talking about, okay, what does it mean to be a dwarf? And you'll see that in every single RPG ever that uses races in some way. You have something that's going to be, well, let's explain to you what this is so you can kind of understand kind of the lore behind the character that you're creating, you're definitely going to want, to know about this. And instead of just going, this is what dwarven culture is, they're supposed to go, why, dwarves are freaking awesome! Why stop with one dwarf? What about a whole party of dwarves? There's nothing a team of dwarves can't do. 5 dwarves alone can easily kill a dragon. 10 dragons. Why, Vorka the Fell-Handed alone slew 5 dragons at the siege of Varloska before succumbing to her wounds. 1 dwarf. Think what a small, dedicated party of dwarves can do. Is that not an awesome way to introduce a character race? It's just amazing. And then the other thing that I find really interesting, I'm not going to go nearly as in-depth with the dwarves as I did the tactician, but this is the mechanic stuff. This is all lore. This is the mechanic stuff. So as you can see, dwarves, they can see in the dark. They're grounded. They have this runic carving thing. You can carve a magic rune under your stone skin with 1 hour of work. The rune the rune you carve determines the benefit you receive. You can change this rune with 1 hour of work. So you can have one of these 3 things active as basically as a racial ability. And one of the ones you can have is voice. You communicate telepathically. Dwarves are psychic! In this setting, dwarves are psychic. And I am all for it. Everything about this sounds massively cool. The massively buff lady dwarf here with, I think that's a staff because of where she's hitting it, where the handhold is. That's a staff, and then she just also happens to have a sledgehammer. And she's ripped, and she's wearing cool armor, and she's kind of cybernetic. That's kind of weird, and then, I don't know why, this violates OSHA right here. You don't have exposed toes. It's a bad idea. If you're going into combat, don't leave toes exposed. That's dumb. You should, OSHA, get on this. Get this door. You don't leave toes exposed. You are just asking to lose those toes. This is what it is. Give them boots. Give them boots. Okay, enough about dwarves, but they do look pretty cool, right? Force movement, this is all mechanical stuff. I could care less about this. Again, this is just basically kind of telling people how mechanics, and the reason I couldn't care less about this is not because it's not useful. I don't know the rest of the system, so this is talking about the complexities of a system that, in my mind, doesn't exist yet. So talking about how complex it is doesn't mean anything. But you do stuff like slamming into creatures, slamming objects, hurl through objects, forced into a fall. As you can see, the tactical aspect of the game, and I think that's why they included this, the tactical aspect of the game is going to go pretty far beyond just the idea of I move my piece around to get flanking. Using... to me, this says DMs, if all of your combats happen in big empty boxes, then you're going to be doing your players a disservice. They need to have stuff to throw enemies into and walls and stuff to hide behind, which I believe, even when the system doesn't really reward it, I think is really essential in D&D in general. Just doing all of your combats in big old boxes is boring as hell, and just RPGs in general. But this kind of shows that they're going to incentivize DMs to think about this stuff, and players are going to think about it as well. It always makes me happy when I get a player that in combat they go, hey, can you describe the room to me? And I'll go blah blah blah, and they go, is there like a table or something? Sure. Well, why are you worrying about the table? Well, I was kind of hoping I could throw this person onto the table and use it to trip them or something like that. That stuff always makes me excited because it means that the player is thinking not about the mechanics of the game, but they're thinking about what their character would do in an actual live situation. And that's really cool. And it seems like this tactical stuff that they're talking about here is going to highly incentivize both players and DMs to think about more than just, okay, where do I go so I can hit the target the way I want to? This is going to make you think about the environment that you're in. And I'm always into that. And then we have this. So I mentioned before, we're looking at the tactician. They have this thing like kits. You can use martial kits. Well, what in the hell is a kit? It seems that kits are going to, as far as I can tell, and this is just an assumption based on what I'm seeing here, kits are going to replace equipment. And by that, I mean that you're not going to have to worry about, well, do I have a rapier or do I have a scimitar? or want that? No. Like one of my favorite examples of just inventory gone totally wrong. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, there are something like 30 or 40 different traits that a weapon can have. That is more traits than they have weapons in the player's handbook for 5th edition. It's an incredibly complicated system, and a lot of the traits are like, this has the dwarven trait. Well, what does that mean? That means it's a dwarven weapon. Okay, how does that change it? It means it was made by dwarves. Okay, so does that mean it looks a certain way? Well, kind of. It looks dwarven, however you think dwarven looks. Okay, well, does that mean that dwarves get bonuses to using it? No. Unless they have a specific ability that gives them benefits to wielding dwarven weapons. So why does it matter that it's a dwarven weapon? What makes a dwarven weapon different than an elvish weapon? Well, because dwarvish weapons are dwarven and elvish weapons are elvish. But that doesn't mean anything. You're just adding more words. No, we're not. Dwarven means that they are dwarven. Don't you understand? It's dwarven. Try saying it. It's dwarven. Yes, but if I swing a dwarven hammer versus a just regular hammer, they both do the same damage. Well, that'll depend on what the weapon type is, because there's many different types of hammer. Oh, dear God. So what it seems like to me is that kits feel like they're going to be kind of replacing specific weapon types. And I'm also thinking that if you do get magic weapons and armor, you're probably going to get magic kits. Because if you look at like the one that I'm most interested in, because I'm a Castlevania fan, let's look at the Whirlwind. So the Whirlwind kit makes effective use of whips, granting you mobility, damage, and reach. If you want to be a mobile warrior using a chain or whip, this is the kit for you. Whirlwind equipment. You wear light armor and wield a whip weapon and a thrown weapon. So maybe the kit is not completely replacing equipment, because it does specifically mention a whip weapon and light armor. So it looks like you're still going to have equipment, but the kit kind of is a way to customize how you fight. And I have no idea, because again, I haven't seen the rest of the thing. They didn't give me any more previews about that. But it seems like by equipping a kit, it kind of changes how you interact with things. So Whirlwind bonus. You get the following bonuses when you use this kit. Extra health, extra speed, extra damage with weapon attacks, extra range with weapon attacks, extra reach with weapon attacks. And then you get a spot and a counter power, effectively. Chain reaction, attack, weapon, 1 action, melee 2. Target 1 creature, damage 2d6 plus 1 plus agility. Each enemy within your reach takes damage equal to your agility. So this is, you hit someone and then go, and you hit everybody around you. And it's only enemies, so that's really, really cool. And as you can see, they have all these things like shining armor. You wear heavy armor and wield a shield, a medium weapon, and a thrown weapon. You gain the following bonuses when you use this kit. Extra health, speed, damage, range. You use the following ability once per encounter. Lead the charge. Time maneuver. I'm assuming that's your move action. Distance 10, target each ally. You move up to your speed and each target can do the same. It's a movement thing. It doesn't say if these are martials or anything. I'm assuming that these are going to come in categories, because remember, if we look at the tactician here, your kits, you can use martial kits. So martial kits is a thing. And I'm assuming this is a page. Actually, what I'm going to assume is this is not even a page out of the book. I'm going to assume that this is kits taken from various places, because nowhere on here does it say if these are martial or anything like that. And so what I'm thinking is the kits are probably going to be grouped into like magic, martial, or something like that. And wizard, most definitely, I'm going to say is not a martial kit. But as you can see, protect yourself with magic wands and wards and wield a staff. Gain the following bonuses. Health, speed, damage with magic and psionics. See, there's psionics! Range with magic and psionics. You can use the follow ability once per encounter. Take flight. It's maneuver, so your move action. Distance 15, one creature. The target can fly a number of squares equal to your reason, intuition, or presence. So you can just give yourself or another person the ability to fly somewhere, which is super cool. So yeah, the kits thing makes me really, really excited. Because again, this seems like another way to kind of customize your character and make it play the way that you want to without having to create really, really complicated rules. You just equip a kit and it lets things happen. Then the final thing they have is a monster manual page, which, as you can see, this is a Necromancer. It's a level 1 leader. I like leaders. Chance hit. I have no idea what most of this stuff means. And then you see basic attack, maneuvers, triggered actions, villain abilities. This looks badass. Shadow form. Your blood shall empower my creation. This is super cool. And then they also have a magic weapon here. So, Blade of Quintessence, light, medium, or heavy weapon. Talks about it. First level, you gain bonus to damage, and each time you make an attack with a weapon, you can change the damage type. Fifth, bonus to damage increases to 4. In addition, you can use it to make a ranged attack. And then ninth, bonus increases to 6. Hold the weapon, you have immunity 10, fire 10, lightning 10. And if I'm guessing right, again, based on my knowledge of 4th edition, that probably means if you get hit by... Oh, maybe not, because they use the word immunity. I'd be interested to find out what immunity means, because either that means the first 10 damage of anything cold is just ignored, or you are immune to something under level 10 or something like that. If I had to guess based on how things worked in 4th edition, it would be you ignore the first 10 damage of cold that gets of any attack. And then, this is interesting, Pocket Kobold. That's kind of cool. So, yeah, overall, the MCDM RPG system, what are they calling it? Yeah, the MCDM RPG is what they're calling it. Looks amazing. I am massively thrilled with it. I don't know if I have the money to back it or not. I'm hoping I do. But Christmas time's a bad time to have me trying to spend money that I don't have. So I may not be able to back it. I might have to buy it when it comes out. But I'd like to back it because this looks amazing. And yeah, I'm incredibly impressed. It's obvious that unlike other groups that are like, well, yeah, we're making our own RPG. He's actually been making it for a long time and is not just going, well, we're just going to take off anything that's similar to D&D. We're going to change the words, and then that means that it's ours and it's not theirs. But you don't have to change the words. They gave it away for free. Yeah, but we don't like them anymore, so we're going to change the words. But you're literally just making things more confusing because the words that they use make sense and people already understand it. Yeah, but the words are different, so it's all ours. That means we're creative because the words are different. If you couldn't tell, I am less than pleased with that. That being said, this is probably the longest Daily December video I'm going to do that is not like a Discovering New Dragons or an in-depth review or something. So I hope you guys enjoy this. If you guys would like me to do more kind of D&D deep dive style stuff, just not with D&D, because I've just run out of D&D classes to do it on, and I don't want to go through every spell in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, because that would be a nightmare. But if you guys would like to see more stuff like this, I miss doing D&D deep dives. I really did enjoy it. I just ran out of things to do. And I got a little bit burnt out of D&D. So if this is something that you guys would like to see more of, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll do some more of these. My only issue with doing it is I generally don't like going super in-depth to stuff that's behind some sort of a paywall, because I'm always worried that someone's going to be able to use my video to basically recreate it without having to pay for it. And I never want that to be a thing. The only reason I do it for D&D is they're so massive and there's so much more that you get. Like, it's very rare that you are buying anything for just one thing, like for a subclass or something. So there are other things that you can get from them that I really don't think that my D&D deep dives are stopping people from buying books. But yeah, if you guys are interested in some kind of deep dive style thing focusing on other RPG systems, let me know in the comments down below. Suggest a system that you'd like to see me do it for, and I'll see if I can come up, at least, again, because Daily December is about me trying new things. I will try the bare minimum to at least do a single episode of it. Whether or not it becomes a series that lasts for any amount of time will depend on if people like it, if I enjoy doing it. But I'm willing to try. So in the comments down below, if this is something you would like to see, suggest a system that you would like to see, like a deep dive character thing where I talk about how you can use it in the system, just like I used to do on D&D Deep Dive. And I'll see if I can make it happen for Daily December. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.